The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome, DFS Army. One more look for Yahoo. We are doing the Conference Championship, 2-game slate. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right. So we are going to look over at the Sharp app. So we got 2 games, Conference Championship, NFC Championship, AFC Championship. The high game total is Cincinnati and Kansas City. Cincinnati was favored, but I think maybe because they thought Mahomes wasn't going to play or he was going to be more limited than they're now currently projecting him to be. So Kansas City is now favored. Of course, they're at home. This is an Arrowhead. And the total is 48 points. So not really a big difference between these totals. This one projects pretty close. I think 1.5. And then same with Philly and San Fran. So that's a pretty close game, pretty close spread. 2.5 there, 46.5 over under. So very close, 1.5 between these 2 games. Which game will be higher scoring? Obviously, we're probably projecting Kansas City and Cincinnati to be higher scoring just based on the 2 quarterbacks in that game. And both the teams not having elite defenses like with San Fran and Philly. San Fran, obviously, they got Brock Purdy playing exceptionally well, but still a 7th-round rookie. And then they got Jalen Hurts on the other side. Both teams have really good defenses. So, we'll see how these games go. It's a coin flip, right? There's 2 games, really good teams, studs on both sides. But if you're going to lean one way or the other, obviously the odds makers think the Cincinnati Kansas City game is going to be more higher scoring. Now, this is over at the Sharp app. This is in iTunes. It's in Google Play. So if you are a DFS Army subscriber, you get a free month in the Sharp app. And this is sports betting, player props, everything you need, and specifically in your DFS decisions, like having player props, knowing people who are really sharp who can bet the over and unders on those could definitely give you an edge. So if you're a DFS Army VIP, go ahead and check this out as you get a free month to the Sharp app. So over on DFSArmy.com, my article, I'm breaking down the 2-game slate. We're going to start with the cash game players first. That said, I'm not really playing cash on a 2-game slate. It's just not for me. I love it on full slates of 6-game slates. Once it gets really condensed, I don't like it. I'm more of a tournament player. But nonetheless, I'm going to start out with the cash game plays. So the 2 that I have over on Yahoo, Joe Burrow, $37, and Patrick Mahomes. I really like both quarterbacks in this game. I do think Joe Burrow is the safer play, with Mahomes being obviously going to be a little more immobile. He's a very mobile quarterback, but with the high ankle sprain, we don't know how that's really going to affect him. But, we're going to assume that he's not going to be moving around and making plays as he normally would. So I do think Joe Burrow is a safer play. However, Mahomes comes at a discount to Burrow. $4 cheaper, and their projections are very similar. They're almost identical. So Mahomes actually, his projection with Jalen Hurts is like a fraction of a point different, but Jalen Hurts is obviously $6 more. So I think he can go there in cash. I like Burrow a little bit more, really, in all formats, but you could definitely go there with Mahomes in all formats as well. And obviously, I expect Andy Reid to really have a game plan to, kind of minimize his mobility issue that he's probably going to have just by doing a lot of dump offs to McKinnon, running the ball a little bit more. He's going to scheme things a lot easier for Mahomes this week, but nonetheless, I still think he can get it done. So, and odds makers obviously do as well, because the game line really didn't drop, and neither did their team total. So, as far as running backs, Christian McCaffrey. Now, the Eagles, if there is one slight weak spot, because they have a really great defense, obviously a great secondary, they're best being attacked on the ground through the run. And specifically with San Fran, Brock Purdy, he's played very well, but you don't want to ask him to go out and, throw against Bradbury and Darius Slay. So Kyle Shanahan's very smart coach, maybe, the best mind in the game. He knows he needs Christian McCaffrey to win this game. He's going to lean on him. Now, Christian McCaffrey does have a calf injury, but nonetheless, so does Mitchell. Mitchell has a groin injury that he's dealing with. So I really think you just lean on Christian McCaffrey in this game. He's a very safe cash play. If you want to fade him in tournaments, do your thing. There's obviously such thing as a fade on such a slate this small, a strategic fade for like a Christian McCaffrey dealing with an injury. But I do think he's the best play, on the entire slate as far as this matchup and what they're going to ask of him. So the other running back that I do really like, and I love Joe Mixon. He's actually my favorite play on the slate, all things considered. Price, no injury, the matchup, all those things. I think we saw last week the Bengals, they had been missing some offensive linemen. So they're like, well, we're just going to run the ball. We're not going to ask Joe Burrow to sit back there and just, get hit all day, with pass rush of Buffalo this week, Kansas City. Kansas City's got a pretty decent pass rush. So I think they will lean on Mixon again. He got 22 touches last week. He projects for over 100 all-purpose yards this week via the Sharp app. So I'm going right back to him in all formats, especially at $26. I love it. Now, Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon, they're priced $1 from one another. I think one of these two backs is going to have a good week this week. I don't know who, and it's really hard to say. I think you can make an argument for both of them. Pacheco, mainly because the Chiefs, they want to help an injured Mahomes. Just do as little moving around as possible. So I think that, it's a good chance that Pacheco gets a lot of carries, as we saw last week, and he almost really broke the slate last week. He had a pretty good week. And then same thing. I think you can make the argument that Reed's going to scheme a lot of short passes for McKinnon, as we had seen multiple times this year. And, McKinnon would be the beneficiary of that. He's more of the pass catching back. So I like exposure to both of these running backs for sure. I'm not fading either of them. I will have both exposure to both. Not gonna, unless you're not gonna put them in the same lineup unless you get really silly with it, like in a large field GPP. But it's kind of pick one or the other. They are both the two top fantasy points per dollar backs this week via the Domination Station. And by the way, if you're a DFS Army subscriber, you have access to the Domination Station. If not, use the tools that multiple DFS Army subscribers have used to win 100,000s, millions, you name it. Use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. And while you're here, please hit that like button. If you have any comments on who you like this week, let me know in the comments. So going on to wide receivers. Number one, Jamar Chase. Cash game, but he's my favorite play at wide receiver on the entire slate. And for good reason. The Bengals, they have handled the Chiefs multiple times. They squared off. And Jamar Chase is obviously the number one guy. He's my favorite $30 plus wide receiver on the slate because this is a game. Kansas City is going to be a formidable opponent. Obviously, they are going to force Cincinnati to score for the entire game. So I love Jamar Chase this week as my cash game wide receiver over $30, but I love him in all formats. Now, Devonta Smith, he continues to be underpriced on Yahoo relative to his role. He's averaged about 10.75 targets per game over the last month of the season. double-digit points spanning over the last 7 games, 26% target share. It's right behind A.J. Brown, who's got like a 28% on the season. And yet he's $5 cheaper and been extremely effective. He's actually been better, over the past month or so. So love Devonta Smith. He will be in my cash game pool. Debo, 8 targets over the last 2 games and 3.5 attempts during both of those games. Also, I do think that they're probably going to manufacture more touches for Debo with Eli Mitchell being banged up. So I like him to continue to get touches. He can get goal line carries too. There is the worry that he might vulture some from CMC. So got to keep that in mind. So obviously we love Debo Samuel. Top fantasy points per dollar play for wide receivers this week via the Dom Station, DeSuS. Now, as far as Kansas City wide receivers, it's so maddening trying to pick which one is going to go off or, just even get consistent targets and a decent score. But Tony last week got 7 targets. Both MVS and Juju got only 2 targets each last week. And one thing we have to think about is, okay, they traded for Tony in season. So they're bringing him along more in the offense. He got 7 targets. He's also getting carries. And he's just more talented than both MVS and Juju. So, when I look at his over-unders this week in the Sharp app, he actually had very similar over-unders as far as like passing yards to both MVS and Juju. So, with the volume and his talent, I'm going to bet on Tony every time. He's $15, so I love him this week as my last wide receiver in my cash pool. Tight ends, Kelsey, wide receiver 1 with tight end designation. Projects very well again this week. In cash, I normally would pay down. So that's just my recommendation because it is obviously a spot of high variance. But Kelsey, I think you have to have tons of exposure to him in tournaments, of course, this week. Now, Dallas Goedert, $19. He is the top fantasy points per dollar play this week at tight end. So if you don't want to get up to Kelsey, but you don't want to pay all the way down to Hayden Hurst, he's a great option. Hayden Hurst, he was our tight end pay down last week, and he smashed. I will ride with him again this week in cash, just based on how good the lineup construction. Because although I'm not sure if I'm playing cash, I was building, some cash lineups earlier. And if you have $14 Hurst, you could really jam in a lot of studs. So love that. Now, defenses, my top defense this week is going to be Philly in tournaments. But I do think the paydowns, which I normally will have most exposure to, I think you can make a case for both for Kansas City and Cincinnati. So Kansas, and they're 2 top fantasy points per dollar plays. So Dom Station agrees. So Cincinnati, they've been banged up along the offensive line, and Kansas City, pretty good pass rush. So they could definitely get there. The game's in Arrowhead. They're $13. And then obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals, Mahomes is going to be not nearly as mobile as we know Mahomes. His escapability and being able to keep the play alive is really where he shines. And if you take that away, I can see him get sacked several times and maybe even turning the ball over. So I love Cincinnati this week at stone minimum. Now, these are tournament plays. My cash game pool, those are all tournament viable as well. But we're looking to sprinkle in some guys who maybe are lower owned, maybe are very high variance, and just looking for ways to get leverage on the field. So I do think when it's all said and done that, Jalen Hurts, I'm not expecting him to be as high owned as both Burrow and Mahomes. And the reason being is just listening to the talk around these games. Most people think this is going to be a grinded out game for San Fran and Philly. And it could be because both of these teams have really good defenses. And, they think it's going to be, low scoring. And obviously Jalen Hurts, he's expensive. That doesn't bode well for fantasy points. So that is probably the case. But the game totals, again, we saw it. They're 1.5 away from one another. So they are close. And that said, just based on variance, there's a chance that NFC game ends up being the higher scoring game, especially with Mahomes being hobbled. If he's not as effective and Kansas City isn't scoring as much as we expect them to, as we had thought before, before he got hurt, and we thought this game might be on the schedule. This game would be probably well over 50 points. So you just never know. And because of that, I'm going to get some exposure to Hurts. Now, I do think I like some different type of constructions. Hurts QB +1. Maybe he brings one wide receiver with him, but he runs one or two in. So, he's not going to quite get there with two. And also QB +2. So AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and even Quez Watkins, they're all in play for me. So from strictly a leveraging ownership standpoint, assuming Elijah Mitchell is active and plays, I do think you should have some exposure to Mitchell just in case CNC re-injures his calf and Mitchell ends up getting the bulk of the workload. That said, if Mitchell is not expected to play, or we get a report that, he's going to be limited, I would take some shots on Jordan Mason as well. So, but yeah, Mitchell is nursing an injury. He's not a full go, so don't get crazy with your exposure and, go all in on Mitchell. Wouldn't recommend that. Now, Perrine, 7 rushing attempts last week and 5 receptions. So again, if Casey's pass rush is getting there, there's always a chance that Burrow is just doing a bunch of dump offs to Perrine and he could make value. He's only $16, of course, GPP only play. Kind of the same with Kenneth Gainwell. Now, last week he was better than anyone expected. Even Bobby Wow mentioned him on Tournament Tactics, but went for 112 yards and a touchdown on 12 attempts. So slim to zero chance that happens again against this really good San Fran defense. But he's only $12 and it's a 2-game slate, so he doesn't need to go crazy to be in the winning lineup. Just keep that in mind. Definitely would have some exposure to him. I don't like Sanders this week. That's a full fade for me. AJ Brown, stud coming off a dud narrative. I love it. San Fran is a really good run defense. Best attack through the air. They give up 2.7, 2 points above average to the wide receiver position. Brown can be the number 1 wide receiver on any slate, especially a small one like this. So I will have tons of Brown in tournaments for sure, even though he wouldn't be in my cash lineup this week. Now, T. Higgins, due for some positive regression. He's had some bad games recently, but when he's good, it's 19 to 25 points. And that would definitely be enough to be in the nuts on this 2-game slate. Definitely play in both sides of Casey and Cincinnati stacks for me. Round this out here, Brandon Ayuk, really tough matchup, but I wouldn't mind having a little bit of exposure to him as a bring back and hurt stacks, just as a way to differentiate your lineup, because most people who are going to do a bring back, with hurt stacks, they're going to have a Christian McCaffrey or a Debo. So, mixing in like an Ayuk and a Kittle, I like that as a way to get different, of course. Obviously, you can stack him with Brock Purdy. I'm not playing Purdy this week. He won't be in my pool, but, do you? So Tyler Boyd, we never know when he's going to smash, but he does. When he does, it's going to be 25 points every now and then. $17. So GPP play only in Burrow stacks, and obviously you could include him as a bring back. And if you're doing a Mahomes, Kelsey stack, of course, that's expensive, and you want to bring it back with 2 players, obviously, or just even a single, Boyd's salary is really a great salary to do it several different ways. Now, Quez Watkins, he has scored some touchdowns this year. He's had double-digit points a few times this year, and he's only $11. So that'll definitely be enough to be in the winning lineup if he has double-digit points at his $11 salary. And then last, Purdy, really tough matchup this week, and Kittle has the 4th worst fantasy points per dollar when we're talking about all the tight ends, the 4 starting tight ends this week. But he's still a stud, so have to have him in your GPP mix, of course. That is going to do it for the Yahoo content. If you have liked this type of content, please hit that like button, comment, and then hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. We're going live for Tournament Tactics here shortly. Geek and Bobby Wow and who else is on there? Burns, maybe the other Bobby. So they're going to be doing that soon. And as I said, this is going to be the last Yahoo podcast of the year, mainly because I don't play enough showdowns to go in on giving people showdown advice. I play a little bit. I don't play a lot. I mainly focus on smaller slates, but not single game slates and, full main slates. So that said, Geek, Bobby Wow, DFS Up North, and Hunter, the showdown crew, they got you covered. They cover FanDuel. They do the same half PPR scoring as Yahoo. So watch that for the Super Bowl. They got you covered. And of course, we'll be back next year. It's been an awesome year. Thank you for joining me. I wish you all the best of luck this week. We will see you later.